Okay, what do you we're back? We want to welcome everybody for their patience. Dr. Tipoteh is back. Hi, Prof.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And we did the intro, so we're going to just jump right into the book. But first, one of the questions we wanted to ask was that it seemed as if the 1970s belonged to the progressives, but there's been a shortage of books coming out of this era. So it means that there are a lot of narrative and counter narratives. Why do you think that others who play such pivotal roles in the 1970s in the progressive movement have not written books or have not spoken out more about what happened during that time?
Well, it's difficult to be organizing to raise awareness among the people of Liberia, especially the poor people, the oppressed people of Liberia, and at the same time write books. It's not easy, as you might have noted from my website, and also the two books I've just written. Mostly now, in raising awareness, some of us, like myself, are concentrated on writing commentaries. So almost every week, there are 2 or 3 articles in the newspaper, local media, social media, about identifying the problem and providing a solution to the problem. And the main problem remains massive poverty in this country that is coming from the production of raw materials for export, no value addition. So we continue to work on that. It might well be that some people who are abroad might not have heard about it. There are different forms of working. Some people make a lot of noise. For instance, I was the only one who went to the Supreme Court recently. Now, going to the court does not involve so much loud shouting or so, but why did I go to the Supreme Court? I went to the Supreme Court to raise issue about the most important problem in the country, which is the Electoral Commission, Election Commission, National Election Commission. The National Election Commission is flawed. It's operating unconstitutionally. One aspect of it is that they had a non-Liberian serving as chairperson. It's against the law. This Councillor Kokoya was chairperson. And we went to the Election Commission over 2 years ago, and there was absolutely no political party, political leader supporting my going to the Supreme Court. And went to the Supreme Court and said, well, this is unconstitutional. And why did I go to the Supreme Court? Because unless you get the electoral process working constitutionally, it's impossible to get good leaders, good people to take action to change the country for the better. It's impossible. You can't. We're not going to get people through violence. It's a non-starter. For me, it's a complete non-starter. So I just want to indicate that, but to answer your question is that it's difficult to write books and then be the organizing activistically to make our people aware at the same time. But nonetheless, we've managed to get some books, and one of the things we're going to talk about is, for instance, 3 of the books that I have written. And now on the market, we're trying to work out ways in which that these books will be available. In the meantime, we do commentaries.
Okay. And one of the books that you wrote, I think Democracy Called for to the Liberian People. That book was seized when it was brought to Liberia. Did you republish that book?
Well, the book, I noticed myself that the African Studies at the Indiana University Press seemed to have got it. I noticed that is when you check you do a web search for the book, the Amazon Books is there, and I am wondering as to how that particular book is being circulated now. I know we sent thousands of copies to Liberia, and sent them through Mr. Alberput, late Venerable Alberput, it was seized by the government under the dual regime, and so we're not able to get the book circulated there. But then it's in circulation now. But I understand from somebody who tried to get it from Amazon Books that is run out. So we have to think about doing another edition of it. And this is why we're doing the second edition of Bite and Blow and Pepperbird Bound.
Prof, I want to just go a little bit into the beginning of the book. When you started off with talking about really the value system in Liberia, about how people used to come to the nuclear town to look for I guess women, and what I would like to ask you, do you see that same trend continuing? And then the second part of that question is, how do you see the value system in Liberia now?
Well, with respect to your first question, Liberia is being managed by few people in their outside allies, mainly transnational corporations and the government, thinking that the blessings of God are just for them. And so many of the local people who in power will go to a place like an old cool town, a beach there, and look for the most attractive looking women to sleep with them, but not get married to them. So moralistically, of course, this was sinful. It's a bad thing to do, because you don't go around thinking that women are just good for the bedroom and for the kitchen. It's absolutely wrong. But this is what happened. So this meant that their attitude was that over half of the population of Liberia didn't matter, because women born men and women born male and female. So we're talking about the vast majority of the population already when you treat women badly. So that figured prominently in the book. And in many ways, that continues today. And when the moral fiber is not good, then nothing else works well. You see, because morality is what breeds credibility. And you can give me $1 million in the hardest currency you want to have, and they gave you, and I don't have a good heart for the people, and they gave you $1,000 you have a good heart. Who would do better? You would do better, because and that is a big mistake that continues now. Thinking that the number one resource is not human resource, but is what the very people wrongly call vile, but people from Grand Cape County call jaffing money. And they look we are resource short. That means they're looking for money, and it's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely wrong. So we in our writings, in our advocacies, those of us who are working closely together, some people might refer to that as the progressives or so. In fact, I just did a commentary, you might have seen it, which poses the question, who is a progressive? Because it's widely put around, and some people think that progressives are the one who brought the problems in the country and so forth. And of course, I can say realistically, there was problem to them in the sense that those who wanted Liberia to be straightened up, to be better for all, pointed out the wrongdoings. And the wrongdoings were the corrupt practices which benefited the powers that be. You see, the corrupt practices that benefited the powers that be. I think we went off again.
So with the yes, can you hear me?
Oh, okay, we're still on. All right, we're still on. And
so with the,
I hope I've responded to the question.
Yes, definitely, Prof. You have responded to it. But with this key driver of morality, What are some of the other drivers that led you to this life of activism?
Well, basically, you can have your parental background. My grandparents, my parents influenced me a lot, primarily because, again, through the morality. You know, I mean, my father never seen beating my mother, and my mother was a nurse. My father was a school teacher. That's and that happened. For instance, and my father was also in playing football, and I got academic and athletic scholarship in the United States of America. I was able to get my doctorate at the age of 27. And some people think, oh, what a miracle. I said, well, I didn't get here by myself. It's from what I was brought up with, this morality. And unfortunately, the situation remains very, very difficult today. The morality has become elusive. And many people are being told that the way to advance is through materialism, that you have to go there and get you have a car, do you have houses, do you have lots of women, if you're a man. This is the situation with men, see? And that's why now you have some people say, oh, there's the American Liberians that brought a problem now. Native people can come and do better. And so now the legislature is packed up with people of indigenous origins, packed up almost over 90% of them. So they have done a commentary and say, American Liberian rule, Native Liberian rule, the same. Because the rule reflects the bad governance, where you continue the production of raw materials for export, no value addition, and the poverty is rising. Over 80% of the person we have access to less than $2 a day. So it's not a question of American Liberians are good or Native Liberians are. Is that there are bad people on both sides that who happen to be managing the state. But the way forward is that there are good people everywhere in Liberia. And so the thing to do, and the progressive thing to do, is then to activate, to mobilize the good people so that we can work together. This is the challenge that remains. And I'll have to commend those of you like us focus on Liberia in the media, because by helping to spread the message, make access for those of us to raise awareness. And we're raising awareness as opposed to getting into violent activity. So what you're doing, I cannot say enough good things about it. It's very commendable.
Thank you, Prof. And we know that sometimes courage is not the lion that roar, but it cracks in the everyday. Like you talk about this guy in your book, Sadie Peru, right? Who stood up? Yeah, the guy in Yuku Town who he was just an ordinary citizen. He's in the book, but also you talk a lot about Albert Port. Yes. And we know that Albert Port he had the courage of a lion, and he spoke truth to power. Do you? And you have a poem in your book, Pepper Bird, about Albert Port. Do you see that in Liberia now? Are there people that you would say are as courageous now as when Albert Port was alive?
There are some people who are courageous, but definitely not as courageous as Albert Port, primarily because not that many persons were aware. These days you have many more people who are aware. So Albert Port, there was like he was like a lone ranger, as it were. I used to be there helping to sell his articles. I used to help. He was a farmer there in Cruzerville. That's where he used to live. And I got to be there just like a young man selling on the street I used to sell his books, and there were not so many people were. So he was very courageous. Albert Port, in fact, he used to have his toothbrush and toothpaste in his pocket because he said,
yes,
but anybody from the state could arrest him at any time. So he'd be prepared to go to jail. That was now we have some people today, definitely at the level of some young people and the level of some older people who are quite courageous, but certainly not like Albert Port or Detour, because those days Blyden, Edward Blyden, for instance, there were not that many persons who were so you didn't feel that comfortable. You didn't feel comfortable. But you went there and said, well, look, if I'm alone here, that's it. And Albert Port used to take his toothbrush in his pocket and say, well, they will arrest me today. That's why when he wrote that piece called Governing Business, he wrote a piece to expose the Meserado group of companies.
Meserado, yes.
Governing businesses. We then formed a mass movement called Citizens of Liberia in Defense of Albert Port, Colidad, because he was taken to court. He was taken to court. You know, and even a member of the Tonton Court was recruited from Haiti and to come and had a gun on my stomach to assassinate me. You know, and he was distracted, and I managed to flee. So it's not easy. It's not easy. And Albert Port certainly was there like a lone ranger, you know. And so his situation is far more difficult. He exercised far more courage. You know, if you want to look at the relativity of it, you know, he certainly more courage, because today we have a few more people. There's more awareness. One piece of the evidence of the greater awareness is that with a flawed electoral system, but almost all the people in the 52nd and 53rd legislatures who wanted to go back were not returned, because the level of consciousness now is rising. They were not returned. In the 54th legislature too, that will happen, despite the flawed electoral system we have, but it will happen. And so the powers that be then will be too scared to put most of the people back. And because the people in the streets are saying, how come we put you there when you got there, you're doing your own thing? You know, you having access to $1,000 United States dollars a day, you know, over $200,000 a year, while over 80% of the Liberian poor have access to less than $2 a day, and your foreign partners in the commercial sector alone have access to $2 million United States dollars a day, $2 million United States dollars a day. This is unacceptable, you see. So we're trying to raise awareness non-violently in this way. And what you're doing now, many people are listening to it. If they're 1,000 persons, then okay, they know, each person knows at least 10 persons. Then the people know other people too. So the word goes around. What else can we do? We cannot go take bullet pens and go knock somebody out here or abusing people's mothers around. No, we're not going to do things non-violently. We're not going to do things violently. We do things non-violent.
Before we move on really to the 1970s and the progressive movement, I wanted to touch on something in your younger days. We had discussed on this show about the power of names and naming. And we said that the name is a badge. It's your family's badge. It's also, it can empower you. It can also disempower you. It is a legacy. Now, in your book, you went by the name of, I think, Rudolph Nah Roberts. Then you changed it to Togba-Nah Tipoteh. Can you tell us, we had said that sometimes people go through a metamorphosis and then they change their name. What led you to change your name, and what was the reaction of your family when you changed your name?
I tell you, Jackie, you have read that book. you know, yes. You're sitting here amazed at how well you understand. What happened is my father, whose name the late father was Kogwe Duli Toba. His given name, with given names, his given name was Toba. But his mother's name was Kogwe Duli. Red Dewey. So when they say Red Dewey, they know exactly what quarter he's from the town quarter in Grand Coup County, so they know exactly what it is. That's how. But my father came to Monrovia and barefooted, and he was living with somebody called Robert Manning. And so people ask him, who's that barefoot boy going around? They say, oh, that's Robert's boy. Now, they didn't say, well, this is so-called Manning or so, after the Manning with him. But they said it's Robert's boy. So when I got through all my schooling, we had a family meeting. Because I got my doctoral degree under the name Rudolph Nah Roberts. So I came home with that name and had a family meeting. And the family, we decided that it's not a good thing to have that. Unfortunately, my parents, in a way of hidden protest, kept all our given names in the middle. For instance, my older brother Joseph T. Then my own name, Rudolph Nah. The one next to me was Samuel Togba. The one next to him was Edward Tape. So then the family decided that we'll just drop the Rudolph and the Roberts. And so in, say, Monrovia, then we don't have what's called surnames. For instance, if I have a daughter, her name would be Nah Masno, and then people would say Masno is related to Nah, Togba-Nah. So it's just, then they decided, well, look, we have to find a name to adjust to the city life, a name, appropriate name that our people in the village will recognize. So they got the name of my great-grandfather, in Tipoteh. And now, in the language wrongly called Crew, the correct name is Krau, K-R-U. Just like, many are named Levi is Vei, Kio is Da, Mano is Ma, and Crew is Krawin, it's not Crew. But between our book people and the missionaries, so forth, and the names got messed up like that even to today. But then, so they chose the name Tipoteh. And in Krawin, T means time, and Po means thrust. And Te means thing. When you have something very important to carry a message like that, it takes time, and then you have to push it. So then I said to myself, well, what the family has decided suits me well, because whatever I have learned, whatever book I know, I am now the messenger of the people. I'm taking the people's message. So our people used to do that by drumming. We used to have runners going through the villages. But now, all right, I can do some talking, writing in the newspapers, talking on the radio. Then I can write a book now and then, so forth. So I'm the messenger of the people. So for me then, Tipoteh is the people's messenger. So that's how the name came about. And I tell you, once I started using that name and got it legalized through the court process, then President Togba called me, and and they arranged at the University of Liberia there. I got dismissed from the University of Liberia 3 times. The 4th time, I was fired finally. The first 3 times, the faculty students, they protested for me to stay back, so forth. But after all those years, if you were to look at the souvenir newspapers for my birthday, if you don't have that, I will send to you through your email. So then it shows the tributes coming up, and even now there's a movement to get the University of Liberia to reinstate me as full professor in a chair in economics for me. They're working on it, and so I said, but the straight answer to the question, just one sentence, is that my family found unacceptable to have the Roberts name, even though Joseph Jenkins Roberts, but it was not the name I was born with. And so that's how the Tipoteh, one of my grandfather's name, Tipoteh. And so that's how I'm today, Togba-Nah Tipoteh.
Okay, thank you. Prof, let's go to the formation of Moja, right? So can you give us, so now we're coming to the 1970s, and we want to know, how did it come about that you all strategized and Moja was born? Can you tell us?
Yeah, Moja was born March 21st in 1973. What happened is that, well, I was born in poverty. I went to the United States of America. I got my doctorate on working with in fact, I was in communication with Daniel Moynihan, who was senior advisor on poverty alleviation for the U.S. government, and said, well, nobody has written on what you want to write on, and so I did my doctorate. Had to do with, in fact, if you give somebody assistance for which the person doesn't work, does it increase the person's work effort, reduce the person's work effort, and how does it help to alleviate poverty? So doing some poverty alleviation studies there, I came back home, and so I provided leadership in saying, well, look, we can't go to people who don't have land, don't have food to eat, and start talking about you running for this office. Well, no. So there was Susuku was set up in 1971. Susuku, the poverty alleviation NGO, was set up, and then from two Liberian words. Susu has to do with the funding, the money aspect of it, that you get together. The whole thing was getting people to get what one person cannot do, but several persons can do. So Susu, that's the financial side. And the coup was human resource, and they had a farm. So we said Susu providing financial and human resources to help the poor to help themselves. And then through the work there in 1971, we found out by 1973 that really, it was impossible. It was impossible to get poverty reduced if we didn't have some impact on the state. So then we said, well, if we got to form a political party right away, the true party will crush it. So let's then form a social movement. And then for Moja, but then in forming the social movement, decided not to be driven by emotion, because to attack poverty in Liberia, you have to look at what the sources of poverty. That's from the production of raw materials, rubber, iron ore, their production of raw materials, send them for export, and so that we then had to identify with others in Africa who were struggling. In other words, then we had to get into a pan-Africanist mode. And so the government saw us not as a threat, but saw us as an anti-apartheid type of movement. And so that's why President Togba asked to join Moja, and he was accepted. But then later on, when push came to shove, we found out that the cousin of President Togba was importing Madura toning wine from Portugal. Portugal was in alliance with the apartheid government, and the deputy foreign minister of Taiwan was supporting the apartheid government, came to Liberia, and we went to the airport with posters on. See, so all of these things, then we said, well, look, we're not going to set up a political party now because the government is going to crush it. The same way with the Dock Workers Union. We didn't set up, when they set up a Dock Workers Association, so the association was not a threatening thing as a union. So we have Movement for Justice in Africa, Moja, and so that's how we came about Moja. And Moja remains alive today because what does Moja stand for? It means that justice for all or justice for none. And justice is the indispensable ingredient to have peace. You cannot have peace without justice. It's impossible. Peace is not the end of war, end of shooting. Peace is the removal of injustice and the installation of justice for all.
Yeah, thank you. So Prof, one thing that I think is missing is that we have all these political parties now, and they are under one banner. And I always feel that, yes, they are under one banner, but there is no commonality when it comes to ideology. There's no commonality when it comes to strategizing for economics, politics, things like that. Sometimes you just have an umbrella and you have these diverse voices, and they have one goal, which is to move one person, but they have not strategized to say, okay, this is our commonality, like you guys have with Pan-Africanism. Can you tell me how it is that Moja and Pal work together? What brought you guys together?
Well, let me say first that the political parties here, they don't work together. As I told you before, I went to the Supreme Court to have the Election Commission work constitutionally. In my case, no political party supported it. No political leader in the country supported the case. So I just wanted to correct that. The political parties are just there. They do more talking. They don't walk the talk. Generally, you can come back to that. Then you raised the question about Moja and Pal. What happened is that Moja operating in the country, of course, we started with Susuku. I told you why we started with Susuku, and then went to Moja. The Pal is the Progressive Alliance Liberia, was set up under the leadership of Mr. Barkos Matthew, who is was a relative of President Togba. In the United States of America, Mr. Matthew served as a senior staff of the consulate of Liberia, but they ran into some problems with the government, and so he was removed from that office. And in his being removed, then he provided leadership in forming the Progressive Alliance of Liberia, along with people like Sam Jackson, Marcus Town, Khan Kalon. Now, they used to have a newspaper, and they were not established in Liberia, so they used to send the newspaper there and stick it into the country. And we took the newspaper and started to circulate the newspaper around the country, because we figured out that we had more voices trying to raise awareness as to what the problems are, then it will help to motivate people to try to solve these problems non-violently. And that's how we we got identified. Of course, they're different organizations, but that's how we got identified. As we said, we started with Susuku, but PAL, they just went right into that and then moved into a political party, as you know, the UPP, Other People's Party. So I'm not
one of the things, Prof, that really amazed me reading this book was that when Pal came to Moja that day, that fateful day, Moja said, "We are not in support of any protest." Right? Could you tell me?
I think you have reference to when Barkos Matthews came to the Sports Commission, the 6th anniversary of Moja, and asked permission to bring greetings. And he announced that there will be a demonstration against the proposed increase in the price of rice. I think that's why you have reference to, right?
Yes, but you said that Moja, you advised PAL not to protest, not to do that.
Yeah, but I just wanted to get to the source of it.
Yes.
The announcement. So Marcus Matthews asked the Sports Commission on Broad Street to bring greetings, and so the chairperson, the MC, Comne Wisse, who is now Senator Comne Wisse, said, you can bring greetings. But he went to bring greetings. Instead of bringing greetings, he announced that there'll be a demonstration on the proposed increase in the price of rice, which caught us by surprise. Because, in fact, Mr. Matthews was not well known in Liberia. He used to come to my office, or come to Moja office almost every day during the week, just to be seen around there. And so people just assumed that we had consulted. But this was not so. So by way of self-criticism, I could have gotten up as founding leader of Moja, at the time, and I could have got up and said, no, we don't know anything about this. But I didn't do that. And none of us did it. So by way of self-criticism, and you never go forward if you don't live of self-criticism or criticism of others, so you can correct your mistakes, But on reflection, it's a mistake. We should have got up and said, well, look, even though this caught me by surprise, but we don't know anything about this. But subsequently, later on, I remember someone was sitting on the floor in my bedroom on Ashman Street, Snapper Hill. We sat there looking at them. We said, no, one military leader at the level of colonel, who's a friend of my father, came to him 3 o'clock in the morning and said, well, they will come out shooting, so you people shouldn't get in the streets, so forth. And we gave that advice to Mr. Matthews and the leadership of power. Say, look, we're not for this. We're not for this. And they went, and people today are still saying that, oh, there were April 14 riots, so forth. And our position is that there were no riots, in a sense that the people at on Gurley Street near the UN Drive, where the PAL headquarters were, they were assembled there, but they did not demonstrate. What happened is the police, when they started shooting, then of course this brought an alarm, and so people started running helter-skelter. And in that situation, there were looters, and that's where the rioting came up. So instead of the government focusing on what really happened, then, when elephant comes and kill your baby, you're looking for rabbit to blame. So they came there and said, okay, fine, the rabbit in this case then, that the so-called progressives or whatever it is, they're the one who brought the April 14 riots. Even today they said, we are responsible for all the problems in the country. So one sentence response to them and said that, how can we be responsible when none of us, we don't manage the state? We don't manage the state. Okay, so it really exposes the nonsensical posture. You're responsible for something. The elephant kill a baby, then you come looking for a rabbit to blame. So by way of an analogy, my old teacher, so I like to deal with analogies. But you know what it is that you but they were no to say they were planning, say, well, let's plan to go loot the people place and so. And now over 200 persons died. How did we manage to know? We had young medical doctors, Dr. C.I.Z.O. Barr, Dr. Benson Barr, and others at JFK. They just finished medical school. The bodies that were taken about over 200. But then there were bodies taken in truckloads on the shopping road to be buried in Bassbridge. As I speak with you, I don't know how many there were. I don't know. But we just know there were some trucks that went and took some bodies there. And so that's what happened on that day, April 14th. But we by way of self-criticism, and we thrive on self-criticism. After you correct your mistake, is that we have done some work. When I say we, those of us who work together to bring about change for the better, we continue to do some work, but we haven't done enough. Why we haven't done enough? Because the problem is still that people are still saying, well, you're the one who brought the trouble in the country. Look at all the trouble in the country. You're the one who brought the trouble in the country. This I think you might have heard this yourself. You're the one who brought it, which is nonsensical. It's completely false. But in order for them to distract attention from their own faults, they have to put the blame on others. You see, so that's what it is. And we have to be able to do much harder work in raising awareness, so that people get to know what is there correctly. That's part of the process of changing electoral commission to get good people elected.
And in your book, you said that Albert Port went to Tolbert and said that there must be a commission, and C.A. Brownell was put in charge of the commission. Did you ever see the Brownell report?
The Brownell report, I saw it. How I saw it? It just by coincidence that my parents did well for the children. They chose good godparents for us. And let us hear Brownell was my godfather. That's how I managed to know my report. Let us hear Brownell was my godfather. And President Salif was a member of that committee. But the report never got made public. It never got made public. And of course, why wasn't it made public? Because the powers that be didn't want it to get out. That they were at fault. And so that's why it was not made public. But I happened to have seen it, and because I had access to what my my godfather, Nedese Brownell, and of course, and I work very closely with the daughter, Mary Brownell, who peace be to our ashes, but we work very closely together on local problems and foreign problems, work very closely together.
Prof, I know that sometimes it's not good to go back, but in hindsight, we know that, one of my favorite books is Why Nations Fail. And in that book, it says that every country comes to a critical juncture. And sometimes they take the wrong direction, but they can come back to that place because of institutional, the strength of institutions. So my question to you is, do you see, can you tell me a little bit, like, for example, a progressive movement was moving along, and then, of course, we had the coup. Do you think if we did not have the coup, that Liberia would be in a better place with the progressives?
Well, I think so. Why was there a coup? Liberia is almost like a colony of the United States of America. Now, the work we're doing in raising awareness, making people aware and doing it non-violently, led the American-led government, to say, well, look, we might as well get rid of these chaps. Might as well get rid of it. So then, if the coup had not been masterminded by them, they felt that we would have been able to get the electoral process changed so we would be elected. And they said this would be a non-starter for them because we certainly would be for value addition and not for production of raw materials for export. So that's a coup. Now, as much respect you might have for me, calling me in this program and so forth, but I have to show respect for you. How do I show respect? By providing you evidence. They can be in a state to criticize me if I'm doing something wrong. 3 o'clock in the morning, the coup. Who was in the yard, in the mansion yard? An American who used to be at the university, a young American, 37 years old. He's a political officer at the U.S. Embassy. What was he doing in the yard? And if you were to read the book of President Togba's wife.
Yeah, lift it up.
Yeah, she said, that they said that the white people who want to kill them, but they put charcoal on their faces. That's what she said in her book. You should read the book. You see, but the way things have been building up is that these powerful nations, the big corporations, don't care really who gets. Once they abide by this rule, produce raw materials that we need. Even the French development minister during the 80s, the early 80s, the mid 80s, he said, well, actually, what we're interested in just your raw materials, and you buy our manufactured goods. You see, this is it. That's why Afro Barrel meter,
the Afro barometer, yeah.
Afro, what do you call it? Afro.
Yeah, the Afro barometer, yeah.
Afro barometer. Now they've been doing some studies in Liberia since 2015. But the latest one, 2020, what did they come up with? They did a sample of 1,200, which is more than adequate for the population of 4.7 million here. And what did the sample conclude? Said that 80% of Liberians think that Liberia is headed in the wrong direction. 80% of Liberians think Liberia is headed in the wrong direction. With such evidence, and then of course you look at coming from the statistics house, the African Development Bank, even the data from the Central Bank of Liberia, from the Ministry of Commerce, from the Finance Ministry, from the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Look at all those things, so forth. You find that over 80% of Liberians have access to less than $2 a day. We're talking about the internationally recognized poverty rate. You see, so what does it do? I tell people that the leadership I provide is that it provides an opportunity. each time a crisis provides an opportunity for us to realize that we have to work harder and better. That's why we have the Moja slogan, Impele, Wafapai. And now, why is it Impele? Because Pele is the most widely spoken Liberian language. You know, I've written a song in Pele. You know, come and see. And if you even there's time you want to hear my singing, it's up to you. I sing a short portion of it, but come and see. Listen to me about how God works. We see God moving. There's peace because there is justice for all. God does not pick and choose. Kamba, which is God in one Liberian language is very, you know, Ngala is the God in Bella, so forth. You know, God doesn't pick and choose. So we do what we can. The leadership of right is that if you can dance, you can sing, you can move. You know, I happen to speak all the Liberian languages, you know. What Liberian language do you speak? I know Tennessee speaks Mano Baton, and Mano is not Ma. So in fact, when I get to speaking, when I get to you, I would say something in Ma. So just to make him feel perhaps especially happy. You know? But so that's how it is. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, definitely. And speaking about languages and culture, you espouse the teachings of Edward Wilmot Blything about the upliftment of African culture, and you say that the schools have not infused these learnings into the curriculum. Do you? I mean, I guess my question would be, if you were sitting next to the Minister of Education, what would be your advice to him in infusing the curriculum with cultural specific things?
I said that, Jackie, you know, the way I'm thinking now, my reaction to what you say is that, look, if I had a plane or something, I sent for you to come here to do some work here. I'm not saying you're not working where you are. You're working because here. But because you hit it. You know, I've done a commentary on the over-Americanization of Liberia. It's a tragedy. You see, we are so Americanized here. That's why we know better how to solve American problems. But we cannot solve Liberian problems because we're not Liberian culture based. So I got invited to a national conference, a summit on education at the Booker Washington Institute. I just got a letter from the minister. And I said, well, no, why can't I go there to eat 3 meals a day for 1 week? He should ask me to do a paper. You know, I don't have to be a keynote speaker or anything so forth, although I've written more about this than anybody else here or abroad. But, you know, I can. So I sent a paper, which when I get the email address, I will send you. In fact, it's in the book. It's in the Bright and Blow. It's in the book on national education and national development. And is the commentary I just got through writing too, and it's been published, is that you have to have your education system based on Liberian culture. That's how you know yourself. The Greeks, they didn't come up with know yourself for nothing. Know thyself, know yourself for nothing. And you know yourself. If you know yourself, then you know how to solve your problems. It's commonsensical and also scientific. If you don't know yourself, then you're not going to solve your problem because you don't know what you want to solve. It's like that. So this is why then you are correct. I've learned, and others of us, not as many as should be, I've learned from Blything, from Aberport, Dedu Tue, Bergolo, who was the first African to get to go to Harvard University. And so it's that we just not here. That's why I tell people, in fact, we had a discussion, I tell people that there are 2 types of sciences. 2 types. One is a science based on self-interest, and the other one is a science based on. That's why in the book I've done something on community interest, not self-interest, and coming from Adam Smith. But it's a way, people say, oh, why do not write? I've got 8 manuscripts, but economic theory, capital accumulation. But I said, well, look, we got to write for people to understand and be motivated to change. All these things, who are writing for? How many persons will understand these things? Not many. So I did something and got, I said, Adam Smith, 1776. This the system we're on. Laissez-passer, free enterprise. Okay, but with the orientation, the background of the Scottish economist, what's the background? The background is that, well, let the rich people have access. That's why when the poor people those days wanted to have access, the military came up. Under Margaret Thatcher too, the military came up and didn't play. They messed up with the Labour Party. Is that laissez-passer? Let in French, I happen to speak French almost as well as my English. Laissez-passer, and let them come in, and some people come are accusing me of being a communist, socialist. They call you all kind of names. And I said, well, look, you put me in a good class because Madiba Mandela was accused of being communist, socialist. So I should just want to. But what we are into is really access to markets and access to the ballot box. Access. So you see, one science, that's why some people say we listen to the science. I said, which science you listen to? You see, their background, the Scottish background, laissez-passer, give access to the rich. My access and the access of progressive, in the real sense of the word, progressive access to the oppressed. That's why you have Paulo Freire, who from Brazil, he was working with the World Council of Churches, had this pedagogy of the oppressed. Pedagogy of the oppressed. And the oppressor will not liberate the oppressed. Because the oppressed to gain power. So it's the oppressed who will liberate themselves. You see, that's why our work is to raise consciousness among the oppressed, so that they will be able to take over power non-violently through the electoral process, through the constitutional process, And so, like I told my god sister, the late Mary Brown, I said, well, some people say you retire. I even told President Saliba, some people say you retired, but you're not tired. You can't be tired. You're retired, you're not tired. I keep the work. Here I am, over 80 years of age, and it's almost midnight Liberia time. I probably won't go to sleep until 2 o'clock or so, And I thank God, I'm able to talk with you. And the first thing I have to ask you, am I clear?
Yes, Prof, you are very clear. And I agree with you so much. In Levitsky's book about how democracies die, he says that, democracy doesn't die with coup d'etat and armies. Democracy dies little by little in increments. What you are giving up, and after a while, you have no right. But he says you strengthen the guardrails, right? You strengthen the guardrails with culture. You strengthen the guardrails with these institutions that you're building. And so if somebody comes, they may hit against the guardrail, but the guardrail will stand the test of time. These are the institutions you build. So I'm going to ask you questions about two institutions. One of the guardrails, the churches or the religious institutions. You said that the religious institutions in Liberia, they are weak. They do not speak truth to power, right? So how can that be strengthened? That's the first one. If you would tell us a little bit, I'll ask you about the second one.
Now, again, out of respect, I have to show respect to you by giving you evidence. The churches of Liberia, in 2019, I asked them to chair a committee on the suffering of the Liberian people. So, and I said, all right, fine, I'll chair the committee. They didn't have money to pay me, can't pay me. Excuse me. They have money to pay me. I started chair the committee. In 1 week, I raised $1 million Liberian dollars to finance the work. And as we speak, the churches of Liberia, through the Bishop Carter Brown, who's also, beside being president of the Liberian Council of Churches, also president of the Interreligious Council of Liberia. They don't want to take ownership of the report. And I said to myself, well, excuse me, I just want to drink a little water here.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a little water in my throat. Clear my throat here. And so I said, I want to know. So I started to solve problems, but I started with myself. I said, let me look at my own church. $79,000 missing. Then you go to the bishop's office, $285,000 missing. I said, oh, but they cannot speak truth to power when they, it ain't the same thing. And so a few of us, including David Vinton, Esther Liberty, some of the best minds we have on the economy, we put them together, raised about, we financed the report ourselves. We did a report called the Liberia Economy Group Report, LEG. We are Moja, very good on acronyms. So we said, well, this is the leg that will make the first step to move the economy. So we did a report. And September 2019, October, I delivered a report to the presidency. I've got receipts. We have got receipts from the legislature, the judiciary, all the national leaders, religious and civil society and business people got receipts. But as we speak, not one entity has taken ownership of the report. We said, we don't need foreign aid. Look at here, there's $400 million, $350 million. You can get this $200 million for roads. And it gets showed that 3-4 years, Liberian engineers on there can take over this, farm to market roads, so forth. How the impact on reducing prices, increasing standard of living, so forth. As we speak. So what does one like myself do with all of this now? The thing to do is that you seize this as an opportunity, you learn from it. And what does it say? Is that people who benefit from setting the house called Liberia on fire, as seen in corruption, must not be expected to bring water to put the fire out. This is wrong. I make that mistake sometimes. I say, oh, let me make the suggestion, the government you make this thing available. But you don't spend 95% of your time wasting on the government when they benefit from corruption. And so this is it. That's why then we do our best, I provide leadership in doing our best to make people aware, the different languages, whatever is different, aware. And you say culture-based teaching. So, and we're working now because the educational system we have here is just still overly American now. It's never changed, but we are trying to work on it.
And another guardrail is the electoral system, and I want to read something from your from the 2017 case that you filed. It says, and I quote, "Fair elections cannot be held under prevailing circumstances on account of the following reasons. The NEC chairman, the NEC has 2 commissioners, including its chairman, who are foreigners. NEC allows foreigners to stand as candidates in elections. NEC allows foreigners to vote in elections. NEC deliberately places the wrong names of candidates on ballot papers, and NEC has already announced publicly its preferred political party in the pending elections of 2017. My question to you is, has this case been resolved? And if not, why not?
It's not been resolved, even though we continue to raise awareness. It's not been resolved, primarily because the powers that be are very powerful with the transnational backing, so forth, and they are just do. Even the International Monetary Fund last October gave the government $38 million. Said, look, you're doing very well in fiscal discipline, and also the government is empowered by this. And we continue to struggle. All the banks in Liberia in January 2018 said, well, look, we are running short of Liberian dollars. Then the government of Liberia said, oh, well, you're 25 million US dollars to go mark up the excess Liberian dollars. But the bank said, we don't have excess, we're short. Then the IMF said, oh, you exercising fiscal discipline. All I want is that you have the people in power who will just carry on what they dictate to them. That's the reality here. It's important to understand, even though it's unacceptable, but it's important to understand first. That's how you correct mistakes. You correct it by understanding what it is. So it's not been solved here now. The voter registration rule is not cleaned up. The Daily Observer newspaper came up with details on that. It was not cleaned up. And Kokoya, at the time, he was there in the as chairperson, and he had a press conference. And the majority of people who are in the commission now continue to agree with him on what he said in the press conference. What did he say in the press conference? He said, "Oh, you don't need voter registration rule. All you need is an ID card." And of course, it's impossible. It's impossible to have any voting, any election of voter registration rule. And then of course one of Liberia's foreign friends, big one, and I made it actually public. I made it public, so I can call the name now. The UNDP brought in two voter registration machines. They were flawed. We bought them and said because they're cheap in price, but high in cost. Because this could lead to civil war when you have unfair elections. And how costly that would be. The economy hasn't recovered yet to the pre-election level, So then this was there. And the only person or commissioner who disagreed with Kokoya has been removed. Some people tell you that, but they got replaced, but he got removed. It's Jonathan Weedall. I call his name. He wrote a 2-page a statement. He said, well, look, Kokoya, you just like each of us is the same. You just presiding. You didn't have any meeting with us before you can make this statement that we don't need, as I speak now, we wait till day breaks here. It's about midnight, after midnight here now. But let's say day breaks tomorrow morning, about 7 hours from now, 7-8 hours from now. I could go with a couple of people to Gurley Street when you cross Benson to the World Trade Center and get thousands of ID cards there, thousands of cards. In fact, you can get a PhD diploma from there. I wish that one minister of agriculture, he had 2 from there, and we exposed it. He got his mix, because the mass pressure on it. So this is the situation we're in here. It's not easy. That's why I say it's an opportunity to say thank you again, because why I say thank you, because this thing, many people are listening to it, listening to it, and they'll pass the word on. So that's it.
Yeah, and Prof, that Zambia just had the election, and people always say that the corruption is not in the voting, it's in the counting. So what Zambia did was that they protected the votes, right? They will stay until the votes are counted, and they made sure that the counting was.
There's a sixth time running for the presidency. It's the sixth.
Yeah, but this is a country that removed Kenneth Kaunda. Remember, they moved a strong incumbent. So I think that as we strengthen the guardrails, we will come to the realization that we do need and deserve a country that works. And I think that I urge everybody to buy this book and read the book and learn from Dr. Tipoteh's life about what it takes to really be courageous. And Dr. Tipoteh, I want to read some comments because we do have some comments. Rukasi Duaita says it's a great conversation. Franklin Ware says he's watching. Alexander Brown says I'm here. And Batum Kula said, Dr. Tipoteh, you said it right on another show. Lion kill your baby, but you blame the rat. And then Batum Kula continues, same sample size, same people, whether native or American. Rukas Dwight said, what's the book title? It's called Bite and Blow. Nora Barkley says she's watching from Delaware. And then Augustus Lipo disagrees with you. He says that it is not true. He said the book is not true. I don't know how, because this is your autobiography. So Saki White is asking him, what is your disagreement? State it, you can write. Isa Kofa say you haven't done well over their century because of not investing in our graduates until those groomed criminals that call themselves lawmakers acknowledge that Liberia will always be a continuous criminal enterprise state. Dr. Togba, our graduates should be every government's first priority. And he says our graduates are the future. And Baton Kula says that's why Liberian diaspora politicians got no traction. They know American culture, but they do not know Liberian culture. And he says that you're funny. Our son says that Tipoteh was a realist, but he did not really balance the socialist thoughts with the capitalist. The reason to this, Liberians are part of both worlds. He still has the propensity to balance the system. And then Barton Kula says that the U.S. he was answering somebody. First, Eugenia is watching. And then Barton Kula says the U.S. was afraid that the progressive would gravitate towards the Eastern Bloc and the Soviets because the U.S. had allowed Totman's 27-year dictatorship, right? And then they go on and on. But what do you say? Do you think that it was because the United States was afraid that Liberia would turn communist?
Well, let me say this, that the United States of America is in the mode of encouraging countries like Liberia to produce raw materials for the developed countries, to produce raw materials that the developed countries can have. And then the developed countries produce manufactured goods that can be sent back to Liberia and other developing countries. That's what they really, the evidence shows that they don't really care whether the people are in building democratic institutions or not, And this, you can see this in the Middle East and with the oil situation there too, and it's got its global implications. So now, when it's convenient, they will call, here, for instance, in America, Mitterrand ran a socialist government. But why they didn't go around? Mitterrand and in France, a big member of NATO, North Alliance, a treaty organization. Why? Because the awareness in France is very high. That's awareness very high. But in a place like Liberia, they would then come and say, oh, you're communist, because they want to be able to castigate. That's the term they use, to castigate, And my realizing this, so I said, well, let's say what we really are. We are for access. And look at chapter 1 of the Constitution of Liberia, Article 1, that all power is inherent in the people, So now, when you pray to that, then of course they have to do some scapegoating. And that's why they call Madiba Mandela a communist. They call Archbishop Desmond Tutu, so that they, to make them look like a Bugu man, a Bugu people, So this is the tactic they continue to use. They continue to use that tactic. I don't need to call names, but as we speak, people are using those names. You see, so now being aware of it, that's why even In fact, Robin White from BBC interviewed me one time and tried to do the same thing, all because you're socialist, your communist policies, so forth. I said, just a minute. Let me say exactly what my work is about. So you can put title on it up here. Well, we're for access to markets and access to the ballot box. Not for self, but for others. Building democratic institution. We're not into personalization, but we're into institutionalization. You know, this, so, you know, since you're English BBC, so let me use some big English words, you know. But not for self, but for others. You see? So this is what it is. That's the tactic they use, you know. So Mandela, you're communist, you're socialist, this and that, you know. This, and so now we have to understand the tactics and don't fall into their hands. And so we continue to do that. It's not easy, but it's the correct way to go forward. And those who say, some people say, oh well, the Americans want. Of course, you had the East-West struggle. American they would just brand somebody with a name as a part of the propaganda, so that the people will not take over state power. I mean, and they continue to do that. And continue to do that today. Look at the United States of America. It remains a white racist country. That's how they elected Trump. Even though Biden has got there now, Kamala Harris has got there, you know. And when you talk about some sister from Delaware, I say, well, she's from Biden State. He and the wife went to the University of Delaware. And there's a Liberian young man we're trying to support there. He's also trying to finish at University of Delaware. So, you know, we are aware, but this is a tactic they continue to use, Shaki. They continue to use that. They brand you, you know, hoping that you, and we have to just say, well, look, we have to state exactly. That's why it's important to now do some writing and get people to have access to this, raise their awareness, because we must, you know, we who love Liberia must tell our story. We can't let other people tell the story for us. And this is what has been happening. They're telling the story for us. And so it's people that, you know, believing this and that, so forth. But this is an opportunity for them to learn our own story. And you correctly said that if you're not based on the education on your culture, you cannot solve your problems. Impossible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. And you know, one thing that, and you're right, you know, when you say that we have to tell our own story. And I think that, and then you can add, let me know how you feel about what I'm saying, is that there's a deficit of leadership on the continent. And I would say, you know, I watched African leaders going to France to meet, at least to bow down to the French president. And it was very interesting, you know, because we have this discussion about China, Africa. Oh, China wants to take over, and the subtle power of Europe, you know, because look at the Francophone countries. The Francophone countries, the franc is tied to the French franc, and not only that, 50% of the reserves must be in a French bank in France. And so France is building their country on the interest that this money is occurring. But the African leaders, they run to France, but France is the same country that made Haiti pay them 20 billion. This is Haiti. People say, oh, Haiti is always poor. But Haiti is poor because when Haiti fought for their independence, France said, oh, we would have given you independence, but we weren't ready to give you independence. So all of the money we should have gotten, you must give it to us. So it was, I think, almost in 1970s that Haiti finished paying this debt of almost $20 billion for daring to fight for their independence. And the largest shareholder in the African Development Bank is England, Japan, and America. But nobody talks about that. We just see our leaders thinking that they are sovereign when it's not. You know, it's like an invisible web that Africa is caught in, and our leaders are the ones that are weaving this web that we're in.
You are absolutely correct. And in fact, you know, that's how President Obasanjo and I met. we met in Dakar just on the eve of the release of Madiba Mandela from 27 years in prison at Robben Island. And the president of Abdul Diouf of Senegal should have presided on this meeting. There was an eminent group from ECOWAS on the monetary union of ECOWAS. So we went to, and then we got a word that the president of Senegal was not available, not feeling well. Unfortunately for us, one smart journalist went and took a video of the president playing golf outside of Dakar. Then I went to a President Obasanjo, which we just got. He was not president then. We got to meet, and he said, "Well, look, you presided over this meeting. We're not going to leave you empty-handed. You presided over the meeting." At that time, 100% of the reserves, external reserves of the francophone countries were in the Bank of Paris.
Yes.
And it got reduced to 80%. It got reduced to 80%. But the point of the matter is that the France, these colonies, they're using the CFA, which is the French, the local currency of actually the French currency. They're just part of the colonial aspect. But what is the colonial mode? To produce raw materials for export. That's where all the cocoa that Cote d'Ivoire has, over 60% of the farmers there who are producing cocoa are in a state of poverty. And some people see the tall buildings and say, "Oh, usually people are developing." But development has to do with improvement in the living standards of the people. So this is a situation, and we cannot get tired. Of keeping it. So what you are correct. Why am I saying you're correct? You're correct because you're telling the truth, and the truth of the matter is that in effective terms, these leaders, are just following the dictates of the colonial masters. You know what happened? In fact, Liberators Senghor and Hubert Maillet wanted to be in the French Parliament. They didn't want to leave to come back home. So France had to persuade them, come back home. Just change your flag, but you carry on the same work. This is what happened. And he built a big cathedral there in Yamoussoukro, so forth. That's what I told my pastor. He said, "Oh, you're not coming to church." I said, "Well, church is a matter of the heart. It's not a building. He built a big cathedral there. They're Christian. But the Christians, they deprive children from going to school. Not a Christian. They said I'm bad Christian. I said, no. If you're Christian, you're Muslim, you're necessarily good. Because you're following the will of Allah, the will of God. So you're either Christian or you're non-Christian. You're either good or you're bad. So this is the situation. And we're trying now to correct our mistakes and be clearer, work harder. And as I said now, it's past midnight here, and I'm not tired talking with you. I said, well, I'm not saying to you, Jackie, well, let's close up. I'm getting tired, so forth. No, absolutely not. Because I'm motivated, I'm encouraged, but what you're trying to do, and I have evidence that you study considerably, that you bring in points out, that and the friendship is not about sycophancy. If you added 2 + 2 and got 5, I would say, please, try 4. But you add 2 + 2 and get 4, I say, well, you've done well. So France here, and then one of our West African presidents, when Macron came to the country, made some big money. Oh, we'll start producing raw material. But just the same president chartered a private jet to go pay homage to Macron. Okay, some of our presidents have French citizenships, dual citizenship. Then some see that they are francophone, others they are Americophone, they go to the United States, and some of them are Europhone, but in the sense of European, but really the colonial thing in Europe is just France and England, like Nigeria, Ghana on the English side, La Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Togo there on the French side. That sort of situation. Just changing flags, that's about.
Prof, I am, and you're right. I could talk to you for 2 more hours, and I hope to be able to see you when I get home in December. But I have 2 more questions, and then maybe we can wrap it up. But
Okay,
we would we would really like for you to come back, because we haven't even touched the book of poems, and we have to do that.
yeah,
But
it's dedicated to Madiba Mandela. It's dedicated to him.
and people forget that Mandela never went to school outside of South Africa. He never went to school outside of South Africa, you know, and yet he was.
I decided to dedicate that book to him when I first met him, just when he came from jail, and I went to meet him there, and he went to his office because he had to lock the door. I saw his back. I said, "This is the back that broke the back of apartheid." That inspired me then to say, "Well, what I'm writing now will be dedicated to him." The back that broke the back of apartheid, and that laid the basis of going back again to be with Cyril Ramaphosa, because he was chief negotiator from COSATU, the Council of South African Trade Union. So we do our work as best as possible, but we still have to work more and harder, harder and better.
On a literary hour, we talked about Liberia's place in the community of nations, and how Liberia had an eminent place once upon a time. And we talked about the OAU, and how the OAU also went and petitioned, because if you remember, the Security Council, they had a triple veto against sanctions on South Africa. And so the OAU president at the time went begging countries to put sanctions on South Africa, and Japan and Turkey and one other European country, to kind of like reduce their trade with South Africa. But how do you see, given the force that was OAU, how do you see the African Union now? What part and what role can it play in developing Africa?
Well, fundamentally and straight to the point, almost all African countries are still engaged in a colonial war. Why am I saying this? Because almost all of them have leaders who said that, well, what God, God and Allah, same of what our Creator, common Creator, has blessed us with. It's just for the few of us. It's not for most people. That's why you have, as Thomas Piketty, who happens to be French. Piketty got a #1 rating by New York Times for his book on capital ideology. That got published in 2020. Now, what he exposes the inequality within countries and between countries. That's what he focuses on. Now, why am I raising this point? Is to say that basically, almost all the African countries, you are like this. Unless you understand it, you won't understand how they behave. You see, so they will only do whatever is there to protect their interests. So there are certain things they want. Now, of course, look what happened. They were Organization African Unity, and they changed their name. What did they change their name to? To African Union, then the European Union. Look at South Sudan. They 27 years, as long as Tottenham stayed in the mansion. They were there fighting against Sudan. When that's quote-unquote independence, what did they change their name to? Southern Sudan. Huh? Can you imagine that? So we must not understand. Look at Rwanda, for instance. Kagame now is head of African. 55%, 55% of the legislators are women. So some people refer to Rwanda. Oh, Rwanda is doing very well. But in 2010, they killed, they assassinated 2 of the opposition leaders. 2014, one of them had to run away. The South Africans just had to deport the Rwandan ambassador there because he was trying to assassinate one of the opposition leaders who had gone to take refuge but that's why I wrote this commentary on participation of women, not domination of women. Because people say, oh, Rwanda. I said, well, look, it's not. Women should make a difference. You got women in our legislature now, but they almost all of them are acting just like men. The men over there, and they're pushing the same production of raw materials for export. And then the corruption there, the corruption is there, They could pay $10, $15, $20 United States dollar rent a month, and now they're getting minimally 15,000 United States dollars salary, just the salary alone. Not talk about gas and other things, car, this and all this, 15,000 United States dollars. How can you live with that? And over 80% of the people in your country, your voters, your constituents, don't have access to two United States dollars a day. How can you live with that? But this is the situation we have. So it's in that context that we have to look at the African Union. We have to look at the African Union, you see. And so they do things to detract from the problems they have at home. They do things to detract from those problems, And so that's what it is. You have to do things to detract from the problems you have. That's what you call some people say, oh, the other people are responsible for the problem. We got this and that, this and that. So to detract people, and they use the media they have. The media is supposed to be for the whole country, but some of the journalists now they buy them up, not all of them, but some of them they just buy them. They buy them up, they just buy them up. They got money just for, you see the newspapers. One of the publications here is by so-called progressive. I don't need to call name, but now you have to defend yourself. And but when you look at it now, they're promoting some party that has a bad record, just got formed, a new party, no record, so dictatorial record. Like they're running into it now because the person who from the party got a lot of money and figure out that issue, dictate everything. That's about all it. So this is the context we have, and you have to understand what is happening before you can work to change it. If you don't understand it correctly, you're not going to change. It's just like if you don't understand your culture, then you cannot understand how to solve your problem, because your problems stem from your culture. And as you rightly said earlier, so we can't talk enough.
Yeah, so we have a question in the commentary, but I agree with you because it reminded me of a story I heard where the United Nations said that if you're coming to a meeting with them, you must have equal representation of men and women. And this Islamic country, they brought the women and they said, okay, we have equal. But then they told the women, just sit down, don't say a word, but we are equal, So it's almost like that, because instead of we're trying too hard to fill a quota, but we have incompetent women, just how we have incompetent men, And I always say this, and people disagree with me. There is nothing that says that the minister of gender cannot be a man. Gender doesn't mean woman. It could be a man or a woman. It means competence. Competence.
Jackie, you're so right, and excuse my language, but to hell with this 30% in the legislature for women. I said, and I've said it publicly too, and we're trying to motivate people around this. If you have 10 positions in the private or public sector, and 9 of those positions can be best occupied by women, so be it. But let the door be open to everybody. We can't say, well, and many of our men, I would say most of the men I know, are still thinking that women should be in the kitchen and be in the bedroom. And we say, oh, they got a 30%. So no, absolutely not. If there are 10 positions there and 9 of the positions can be better occupied by women, so be it. but let the door be open for everybody. You know, there's nonsense. Talking about 30% or 40%, whatever it is. You know, nonsense.
Okay, Prof.
Where would we be with all our women? And our women are the one who born male and female. And put the women and male and female together there, you got a vast majority of the population. Common sense. Huh? Where would we be with other women? And we got to get the women to realize that that's why President Obasanjo, when he came here, they said, look, don't depend on us men, greedy men to come and liberate you. You got to liberate the oppressed. We have to liberate themselves. You cannot express the oppressor to liberate the oppressed. It's a nonsense.
That's why I said that, you know, in Afghanistan, the army should have trained the women. The women will never run. They will fight. But competence is the rule of the day. Prof, we have a few comments. I want to read it before you leave. Are you on still?
I'm on.
Okay. So Amos Sanga says Dr. Tipoteh is a true Pan-Africanist. And then he goes on to say, I have never followed this great scholar until now on this platform. I must admit that I had a wrong impression of him simply because of ignorance or ill information. Now I've come to see how astute a scholar and an activist he is. And then Hamilton Zilli says, our high place in the community of nations has been lost all because of the lack of the kind of leadership we have had of recent. But then somebody said, Boyma Gaylor says, please ask Dr. Tipoteh if Moja was successful in bringing justice to Africa. If not, what went wrong, and how can the younger generation continue from where they stop?
All right, very well. Thank you for the question. Now, Moja, Women for Justice in Africa, realizes that to liberate the oppressed, and the oppressed themselves have to liberate themselves from the oppressor, takes time. And it becomes faster to the extent that those of us who say we know better can develop ways to communicate with people. That's why we have the network around the continent. You know, I can call Ghana, can call Algeria. My French is just almost as good as my English. I can call Kenya. I speak some Swahili. You know, and then we encourage other people to be able to communicate. And this is it. So the work of Moja is not complete, and Moja is not the only organization working to liberate the people of the oppressed people of Africa. There are others, and we try as soon as we identify them to work together. So there are in every African country, you'll find that there are oppressed people who are working to liberate themselves. And so we try to get into a network. This is the process to try to do it. So the answer to the question is that no, liberation is not. Liberation doesn't mean to say that you've gone through decolonization, that you got a flag up, because some people are thinking that's what liberation means. That's why I wrote a commentary on independence. Independence doesn't mean to say that you got your flag up and so forth. Yeah? You independent of slavery. You independent of oppression, you know, but you're still dependent on foreigners to produce your raw materials. You're spending. You come to Monrovia now. You go through Claratown, Vital. Can't see the market women rushing into the stores, the foreigners there to get goods. Then we try to encourage them and say, well, those goods cannot be produced here. Form a corporation and you import them. And the goods that can be produced here, then you form a corporation that can grow the things here. You don't have to import them, you know. But you see them there rushing, and they're there, you know, just there on the beck and call of these foreigners who are making $2 million United States dollars a day here. And So this is a situation. The process goes on, and we hope that what we're doing here can inspire you to be a part of this process. And the best you have is not your money, it's your morality. The moral support you give, and you're willing to say, well, look, our password to this person, our password to that person. If you have money, fine, you donate it to try to educate people. But and as Jackie said, the culture-based education is absolutely indispensable. I agree with her on that.
Yeah, Prof, we have just one more question, and then please, no more questions. We are definitely going to have Dr. Tipoteh back on. Hamilton Zilli said, were there any non-Liberian Moja members?
Oh yes, Moja actually was founded in Liberia, but we have a network that is Pan-African. So as I speak now, we have, for instance, the active one. I remember Dr. Sawyer and Emma Sawyer and I went and we drove up to the north of Nigeria, Ahmadu Bello University, to have a Moja meeting there, Ahmadu Bello University, in the north of Nigeria. And of course, we work through the Ghanaian contacts to be able to set up the Buduburam camp there. And we were trying to get people to say, well, we're the same people, so they're not refugees, but the camp was set up there. In fact, they're trying to dismantle the camp now. But the answer is that Moja is just based in Liberia, but it is Pan-African in nature. But bear in mind that the drive for it is the liberation of each country. Work to liberate your country, but it's impossible to liberate your country. In other words, it's impossible to have to remove the poverty generation and get into the poverty liberation stream in any country without having a network around the continent. Why the network is important? Because you have the same multinational, the transnational corporations in the rubber business, in the mining sector, so forth. Oil. Nigeria was better off in when they were dominated by agriculture. Now, with the oil situation there in Nigeria, the military dominate. Also, they have the various refineries. They're not working because it's in the interest of the big military boys to have the oil, the raw thing exported, to Europe. You see, and that's what goes on. And so we in raising it when we have a network. So the Moja is founded in Liberia, based here, but and also Liberia was a refuge place for many people who ran from the country, from oppression, from the Sudan, from South Africa. They came to Liberia to stay. Some of them died here. So when I went to exile into other countries, like Sweden, for instance, the Netherlands, I found some people who, that's why I was abroad when I was part of this campaign, led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, to prevent the United States domination of the International Monetary Fund to give South Africa $1.2 billion loan. Archbishop Desmond Tutu's led a movement that we all work with. Basically, I'm trying to say that the Moja is a network. It's based in Liberia, but we have a network in many African countries.
And can somebody join? I mean, is there a website you can join? You can go on it and join.
Well, that's a very good question. We don't have a website, but in terms of Liberia, just let's say, since I guess we're on Liberia now, can say that whatever the answer to that question is, they can contact me through my email or my number, and then furthermore, I would then provide the contact of the secretariat. There's a secretariat, a contact of the secretariat, and then from that, the membership thing can be assured.
If you want any contact information, please send your inquiries to focusonliberia@gmail.com. We have two more comments. Armstrong Jagba says the West called the best leaders among Liberians all kinds of names to turn the people against them. Now they can take your raw materials. And then Emma Songa said, could you please have this senior man with a young brain on more frequently, please? There's much I personally have to learn from his germ of wisdom. Who knew that the great Dr. Tipoteh was still alive and well, still knowledgeable about past and current events? I didn't. Kudos to your platform. Well, we all know that Dr. Tipoteh is here with us, and we are just so happy to have you. You know, I mean, as a child on Mama Point, Bacchus Matthews used to stand on our steps to talk to the people. And my grandmother used to say, move from on my step, move from on my step. I don't want any trouble. Move from on my step. But we are so happy to have you, Prof. We are very, very happy that you honor our invitation, and that despite all of these things, like we kept saying, oh, God, a man plans and God laughs. But we were so happy to have you, and we are so grateful to you. We know it's late, but we would like for you to come back because we have still the Pepper Bird Bound for Freedom. We haven't discussed your poetry yet. So we want to say thank you. God bless you. Keep you safe in Liberia. You know, wear your mask. and any last words for us?
Yes, well, I'll put my last word in a brief version of a song in Pele.
Okay.
The song just the Moja man did. When you come listen to me, Panga Mini Naboya, come listen to me and hear about how God works. When you see God working, there's always peace because there's always justice. God doesn't pick and choose. Panga Mini Naboya Belingala Tike. Panga Mini Naboya Belingala Tike. Banga minina boya belingala atike atike kunanglata su ya mene falena kunanglata su ya mene falena.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And for Dennis Jar too, I could say something, Ma. It's not mine, but Ma. You know, Ma. Kazu katoto dia. That means thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Prof. And good night and God bless. Thank you. And to all of you, we say thank you for joining us. We say again, enjoy your weekend. Be safe, mask up. And don't forget, we are all Liberians. So please look out for one another, lift up Liberia, and let us build Liberia. Good night.